So that became my full-time job. I was very fortunate enough to be able to do that for a livelihood for around about 20 years. I did radio shows on different stations in the UK, and I was fortunate enough to be able to travel up and down the length and breadth of the UK and internationally to DJ. But, happy days for as long as they lasted. But towards the end of that career, so we're getting to around about sort of 2006, 2007, I'd become something of a jobbing DJ. So whereas previously I was playing guest spots at really great clubs and promoters were booking me to play these great events, by 2006, I'd taken jobs at various bars and different sort of static venues where I was just turning up week after week and playing the same old tunes to the same old crowd. And I was starting to get very bored with it. Also, the music had changed by that point as well. I got into the game in the 90s. Everything in the 90s was so different to what it is now, and so much better, I would say. Hip hop and rap music was so much better. House and dance music was so much better. Movies and films were so much better. And it had really started to diminish by sort of 2006. I'd been put onto the film Zeitgeist, the first Zeitgeist movie, by Danny Rampling, actually. We were stranded in an airport in Riga, Latvia, one time when we both played the same festival event. And we got chatting, and Danny put me onto this amazing film, Zeitgeist, which when I watched it, it blew my mind. It completely changed my worldview. And so round about these times, 2007, 2008, I was starting to reevaluate my entire perception of what this world was all about. And one thing led to another, and that's what put me on the path to researching the true nature of the music industry. The first major result of that was my first Musical Truth book, which I self-published in early 2016. With me, I had to become a music fan. I had to get to know a lot about the music industry. I had to get out there as a DJ, being a part of the industry, playing this music. I had to be doing radio shows. I had to get used to interviewing artists. And I had to travel and do DJ gigs all over the place to get me ready for what I'm now doing.
You'll have to love her. She's your symbol.
Oh, you mean that posh bird who gets everything wrong?
I beg your pardon.
Oh, yeah, the lads frequently sit round the television and watch her for a giggle.
She's a trendsetter. It's her profession.
She's a drag, a well-known drag. We turn the sound down on her and say rude things.
Get him out of here.
Have I said something amiss?
Get him out.
There it is, embedded into the narratives of these movies, and it's in TV shows, it's in songs. A lot of very famous rock songs have talked about this. They talk about Kundalini energy. They talk about the raising of the chrism oil, the illumination of the pineal gland, the attaining of higher levels of consciousness. It's out there in popular culture vehicles, if only people would know how to interpret it. So they veil it in allegory and metaphor, and you've got to know how to decode it. This is actually inspiring the writing process of the book that I'm putting together at the moment, which is called The Gift and the Curse. It's another novel. It's the follow-up to my Cause and the Cure novel. And I've been inspired by all these things that I've mentioned, films and rock songs, to put allegorical elements into the narrative. So in my story, there's going to be a surface narrative, the exoteric for the masses. So if you're someone that just wants a bit of a gripping, thrilling read, then the surface narrative might appeal to you. But if you're someone that likes stripping away layers and looking at symbolism and allegory and decoding anagrams and hidden meanings and esoteric teachings, this sort of thing, then I've put all that in there as well. And I was very much inspired by the movies of Stanley Kubrick in this, because that guy was a bloody genius. Clearly, he came from the inner circle of certain, secret society fraternities, I would say, to be armed with that sort of esoteric knowledge. But he put so much of that knowledge into his movies. So, for instance, you can watch The Shining, and the exoteric representation of that movie is that it's about this guy, Jack Nicholson, who is the caretaker of this remote hotel, and he goes a bit crazy and tries to murder his family with an axe. Okay, if that's what you want to get out of the film, then that's what that film holds for you. But if you want a bit more higher-minded meaning behind that film, there is so much there once you strip away that surface narrative. there's endless interpretations of what The Shining is really telling us. It's not about a guy that goes crazy with an axe. It's about so much more than that. So I've got great admiration for how these stories, these parables, these teachings have been encoded into these movies. And I'm trying to achieve that with my fiction writing now. So it's a beautiful thing when you can learn how to decode these things, because they're offering them up to us. If only we would accept them. I think there's hidden meanings in many songs where you can take them one way or you could take them another. And one example I always give is Led Zeppelin's Stairway to Heaven. Stairway to Heaven is a very beautiful song. It's got some very inspiring elements to it. And I think ultimately it's talking about Kundalini energy. It's talking about that energy going up the human spinal column. That's the stairway to heaven. And when that energy, that oil, goes into the center of the human brain, which is where the pineal gland resides, and this alchemical process takes place, it can result in the illumination of the pineal gland and the attaining of elevated levels of consciousness. That song is telling you all about that. That's what the Stairway to Heaven is. So a song can be one thing or another. A movie can be one thing or another, depending on the consciousness that we apply to it.
Somebody said, it says My Sweet Satan in it. And I thought, oh, gosh, it's hard enough writing the music one way round rather than that way.
Let me tell you something. If you're sitting around your house playing your albums backwards, you are Satan.
So all the hip-hop lyrics are talking about slinging crack, running guns, rolling in gangs, doing stick-ups and drive-bys, all this sort of thing. And when it's not that, it's all about the glorification of materialistic lifestyles and consumption. So Puff Daddy and Bad Boy Records were very responsible for this, popularizing the idea of drinking Cristal up in the club, rocking an expensive suit, women in expensive dresses and designer shoes and gold rims on your Jeep and gold chains and all this sort of thing. What's being put out there to the young people listening to this music is that if you want to be successful in life and accepted, and if you want your life to have any kind of meaning, you've got to be rocking these brands. You've got to be drinking this champagne. You've got to be rolling in these sort of cars, disgraceful messages. And I couldn't see it at the time because I was just subject to the programming in the same way that young people in every generation are. And that music, so-called, you can't even call it music anymore, that which masquerades as hip-hop and R&B these days, has moved on to pushing other agendas. So trans this, trans that, certain social engineering agendas. And satanic stuff as well, just straight ritualistic, satanic, Luciferian imagery is getting pushed through those scenes now. The social engineers, the controllers, they want the minds and the souls of the young people.